just a very interesting event, meeting a lot of beautiful people, sharing ideas most importantly. And I think ultimately just getting a feel, of what, business challenges are, and most importantly, what Verto is doing right now, to solve some of these problems.
What Verto Atlas is doing is helping bring all your cross-border payments tools and requirements into one powerful tech interface.
Creating a common market for us, it's a game changer for the financial sector.
I would like to say that this was a very great event.
I'm Ovier. I'm going to be your host and moderator for today. If you have any questions, direct them at me. Thank you for showing up. I head up marketing and growth at Verto. I've been lucky enough to work for Verto for 4 years and I've seen the phenomenal growth that we've been able to deliver and the great experiences we've been able to provide for businesses in Nigeria and also across Africa. And so I'm delighted today to be able to meet businesses in person, learn about your pain points, learn about how we can better improve your experiences. And with me today is the founders and co-founders of Verto, Ola and Anthony. Ola is going to be kicking off by giving us our opening remarks for the day and kicking off the intro into Verto Atlas, the product that we're launching today. And to start the show, a brief intro into what Verto Atlas is all about.
Thanks, everyone. I think the video probably speaks for itself, but essentially what Verto Atlas is doing is helping bring all your cross-border payments tools and requirements into one powerful tech interface. We'll spend some time talking through what it means for your business in a second, but I actually wanted to start off with actually telling the story of why Anthony and I started Verto in the first instance. So right now, we are a business of about 125 people across 5 countries, predominantly UK-based, because that's where our headquarters is. And we're also primarily regulated by the UK Financial Conduct Authority. But Nigeria is actually, I think, 40 to 50% of our revenue. So, it's a market that is very close to our heart. And it's also a market where, we found a lot of customers almost like without trying. And I think that the reason why is super simple. So a few years ago, my background, I'm Nigerian, but I've been in the UK for about 19 years now. I spent about a decade there working in banking. So I worked in corporate finance for some large banks. and it wasn't exactly the most fulfilling experience, but it paid the bills, and I had a decent life. But at some point, I think this must have been around 2015. If anyone here remembers the first, proper currency crisis in Nigeria, the one that took down Etisalat and the likes. So it was very severe at the time, somewhat the type of liquidity crunch we have right now. And a very good friend of mine, who's not in the audience today, but is a very good friend of Verto's and an investor, reached out to me. He was really, really struggling. He had sold some software to banks in Nigeria, and he needed to pay Oracle, which is the OEM, dollars. And he'd received the money in Nigeria, in Naira. He'd been sitting on it for 3-4 months at the time, had been on a queue with the central bank, and he effectively operated on having, a line of credit with Oracle. So they basically, obviously, allow him to sell and then pay back after a few months. So he was nearly breaching, the period in which he could repay the funds or pay them the funds. And, he was so desperate, he knew that I had a bit of an investment thing on the side. So he reached out to me and said, dude, I know you invest, so you probably do dollars. Are you able to help me? I need to pay these guys a certain amount. And I thought that, so I actually asked him, what in retrospect was very stupid questions. I was like, oh, I don't get it. How would you not have dollars to pay somebody that, you're meant to make a payment for? Can't you just go to the bank and get the dollars from them? And he, obviously, probably didn't want to tell me to my face that it was stupid, my questions. But he then kind of explained what the challenges were, how he had to do no tap with the CBN and and just not really being able to get liquidity. And being an entrepreneur, I just thought, oh, this is a kind of an interesting one. And it just so happened that same weekend, back in the days, I wasn't an entrepreneur, so I had time. So I used to play some golf over the weekend. And a very good friend of mine that I was golfing with was like, oh, the exchange rate is very good. So he's looking to buy some property in Lekki, and somebody had, offered him this property to buy, and that he's now looking for a way to convert his pounds to Naira, so he can actually buy the property. And there's somebody else that is trying to bid for it as well, so he needs to send the money within a week. And I was like, okay, how much are you looking to send? And in dollar value, it was about the same amount that my friend needed to pay Oracle. So I said, okay, why don't you give me the pounds? I have an ability to convert, large value pounds to dollars because I had an investment side hustle at the time. So why don't you give me the pounds, right? I'll give you Naira, right? And I went to my friend. I said, oh, is your Naira ready? He said, yes. I could. Why don't you give me Naira? And then I'll pay Oracle for you in the US. And then he was like, okay, let's do that. So my UK friend gave me pounds. I converted it to dollars. My Nigerian friend gave me Naira. And then I helped send the Naira to New York. And then I also then helped my UK friend settle Naira here locally. And I made enough, probably more than I made in a month as a banker going to Canary Wharf wearing a suit and carrying a nice bag. So I just thought, oh, hang on a minute, this is kind of an anomaly. Why would it be so easy to basically match people randomly together and get this done? And then it just so happens we used to play a lot of poker back then as well. There's some suspects here, Samson and Shola as well. So it was a group of us, everyone was in the city, mostly Nigerian heritage. We meet up monthly to play poker. And that's how I knew Anthony. So Anthony was one of those friends that came together to play. So after that episode, I did a bit of research, and I said, well, the main source of FX in Nigeria at the time, outside of oil, which I think is still the case, was remittance, right? So if my friend was trying to send money to Nigeria to buy a property, then there must be more people like him that typically would want to send money to Nigeria. And just being an entrepreneur, I said, okay, what does it take to start a remittance business? So I literally started a remittance business. I started an app to help people send money to Nigeria. I think within a month or two, I'd set everything up, gotten the license and the permissions. And I was thinking very hard about that time of stopping my job to actually focus on it because I saw the upside. And then I was talking to Anthony at one of the monthly poker sessions after I had built the app, and his mom is in Ijebu, and he sends her money regularly. So I told him, I was trying to flog the app to everybody at the poker table. I'm like, oh, guys, if you're sending money to Nigeria, this is my new hustle. And people kind of looked at me weirdly like, why would you go from being a banker to trying to do remittance? But I guess, at the time, no one really saw kind of the potential. And then Anthony kind of was asking me more questions about it. He was like, oh, really? How does it work? Da-da-da-da-da. He downloaded it, he started using the app. And then the next time we met up, maybe a month after, he said, I started using your app. I was like, hope it gives you good rates. He's like, yeah, really like it. How does it work? And then we went into some more detail. And then at that time as well, there was a bunch of fintechs in the UK, some of which you might know, Revolut, Wise, a lot of white boys just raising crazy money, right? And I was like, hang on a minute. Okay, these guys are raising tons of money doing this stuff. I can figure it out myself. So why don't I do the same thing, build a fintech, sell the story. But then this will be focused on Africa because why is it so hard for people like my friend to be able to move their money? And then I was talking to Anthony about it. I was like, I think there's a big opportunity to start a fintech doing cross-border payments with a big focus on Africa, but doing it from the UK in a way that the banks there and everything would understand the standards that you've set up, and then hopefully also raising money to build for that. And then at the time, he had one or two other ventures he was working on as well. Was just about to start an MBA, and then he said, you know what, this would be a good idea to kick off, and I'll probably even use it for my MBA kind of thesis as well. And that's how we started Verto. So he came off trying to solve a problem. The early days, that must have been maybe 6 years ago. The problem is still here, right? We all still need to get FX and send money out. I think what's changed, as you could see from the Atlas video, is that we've really done, arguably what I would say, a very good job of institutionalizing kind of the offering, and also making sure that we remove the pain points that most of you business owners face when you need to move money abroad. Now, I know particularly in Nigeria, there's a liquidity crunch right now. So a lot of people come to me and say, okay, well, Verto, you guys are playing now because the banks can't get liquidity. I know we have some of our very good banking partners here. But what would happen, right, once the banks get back into play? And we just simply say, well, what we're selling is just not the ability for you to get liquidity, which is always a good thing. What we're selling is the convenience of having an all-in-one platform that you can actually use to meet all your global payment needs. So not only can you, from the Verto platform, collect money in 25 different currencies. So we can give you a bank account in dollars, in euros, in 25 different currencies. Some of these are local accounts as well. You can also, convert, across 49 currencies as well. So I know a lot of people here do maybe Nigerian Naira to dollars with Verto, but you can do so many pairs. You can do Nigerian Naira to Kenyan shillings. A bunch of people do that. You can do Nigerian Naira to euros. You can do Nigerian Naira directly to Japanese yen using the platform. So there's 48 currencies outside of Naira that we offer, which is something else that is strong. And then also, what I would argue, best-in-class payments. So with Verto, and a few people had told me whilst we were doing the cocktail drinks, that they really like the speed factor, the fact that when they send payments using Verto, within 3 hours, depending on the country, sometimes within 10, 15 minutes, you actually get the value elsewhere. So that's a function of significant investments that we've made in payment infrastructure. We actually have something called a routing engine. So we have about 22 banks across the world that we work with, and we have let's call it AI, because that's the buzz now. So we have an artificially intelligent tool that can route payments based on, so if you're a Nigerian business, you want to send money to the UK, we would artificially route that payment through the right kind of bank that can accept payments for Nigerian businesses and pay out locally, and do that, within 20 to 30 minutes of us receiving your funds. So the technology is the real thing at play here, which I think is something that when liquidity comes back into play in Nigeria, which it will soon, there's been tons of good work being done by the new central bank governor to bring liquidity into markets. The ability to offer something like Verto Atlas for CFOs, treasurers, finance directors, business owners to conveniently move their money across the world is something that we think is here to stay. And also, we've a lot of people say, okay, where's Verto's office in Lagos, right? We've always operated within the ambit of the regulatory permissions available. So one of the reasons we've never really had a physical office in Nigeria is because we could only onboard Nigerian businesses through our UK entity, and we couldn't, by law, actively solicit business. So you could hear about us and maybe find out about us online, just to make sure that within the ambit of the regulatory environment. But now that's changed. We now have an IMTO license and can actually also sell through NAFEX to meet business needs. And then we're working on making sure that we can also, do consistent outbound for small businesses as well. We can always do transfers offshore. And I think for us, that's an inflection point where we now want to be in a position where not only for, those of you in the room that maybe have found out about us through referrals or some, organic activity, but open up the platform to more businesses, in Nigeria. We think it's financially exclusive to have businesses in places like Nigeria, not to be able to conveniently move their money across the world because they operate in, something people would think is a high-risk region. There's perfectly legitimate businesses here in this country doing legitimate, transfers, and there's no reason why, for example, large global financial institutions should think otherwise. So a lot of the things that we also do is educate some of our large banking partners. We have the likes of Citi and Goldman as banks on the fact that Nigeria is not as high risk as they think it is. We've built our own internal compliance tools. Some people always tell me, why is it so hard to get onboarded to Verto? Like, I need to send so much documents and all of that stuff. That's because we need to make our partners comfortable that the bar that we have for onboarding customers is very high. And that also should give everyone in the room comfort that when you use Verto as a platform, you can guarantee the source of funds and the legitimacy of those funds as well, because that's a very big deal. And then also, we consistently do what we call transaction monitoring. So we always make sure we monitor where money is going to as well on the platform. So that hopefully gives our partners peace of mind. So that's the Verto story. I don't think I've told it anywhere, and that's why we started. Nigeria, very close to our hearts. We love our Nigerian customers. We think that hopefully when liquidity comes into play, we would actually now see the true power of Verto, which is having this remarkably robust tech platform that you can use to do all your international cross-border payments needs. So with that being said, there's a panel tonight that will maybe discuss more about the challenges business in Nigeria face with moving money, and also harp on one of the two features of Verto Atlas. So thanks for coming out tonight. I'll try to meet as many of you as possible. And I'll hand it back to Ovie to introduce the panelists, and hopefully it's a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Next, we're going to go into our panel, really delving into how Verto Atlas is adding value to enterprise businesses and how we're solving huge treasury challenges for businesses as well. To kick off the panel, joining us will be Rolayo Akigbe. Sorry. You can see it anyway. Rolayo is the divisional head transaction banking at FCMB. Joining her will be Deoye Ojuroye. Anyway you like, sir. Deoye is the executive director and CFO of Providus Bank. And up next is Olumide Owuashaye. Thank you, Olumide. Olumide is a treasury specialist for Bosch, so he's going to give us a lot of insights around the challenges for businesses and corporates specifically. And last but not least is Anthony Oduole, co-founder and CTO of Verto. All right. Let's kick this off. So we've got a full house. We've got representatives from the banks, we've got representatives from fintech, and we've got businesses on board. Flight is about to take off. So I'll start out with the corporates. Our treasury specialist. What are the challenges that you face being on the business side of transacting both in Africa and across multiple African markets?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. So I think that question is common to everyone here because everyone has businesses here. For a corporate, one of the challenges that we face that is common among us is the macroeconomic challenges. Basically, there are some micro challenges that are specific to companies and industries, but the major challenges that are common to everyone are the macroeconomic challenges, and that is obvious. For example, in Nigeria, we have the FX issue, which because most of the business in Nigeria does a lot of imports, so we're bound to be exposed to this FX market. And the fact that the FX market in Nigeria is highly volatile is one particular challenges. And of course, also regulations and a lot of the ease of doing business in Nigeria. Also, a lot of bureaucracy in going through the right channels. So, you see, for us, as multinationals who like to go through the right channels, kind of slow down decision making because of the whole process of getting documentation done, even if it is the right way. But because of the lot of bureaucracy and bottleneck, it slows down decisions, add to the transaction costs and all of that. So those are some of the challenges that is being faced. Of course, other challenges are security and the way it's mentioned, but those macro challenges are basically the challenges that is being faced, the unpredictability of the environment, highly volatile environment, interest rates, regulation, instability, the fact that government can change policies sporadically that affect your decision making and put some cost in you. So those are the key challenges that is being faced in the Nigerian market, basically.
All I can say is wow. That's a tsunami of challenges. So you've talked about FX risk, you've talked about the ease of doing business, all of the documentation that you have to put together to go through the right channels. From a banking perspective, Deoye, how do you partner with fintechs to really try and address these challenges that businesses are facing?
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I think just the way fintechs are, they're more agile. They're able to focus on a single problem to solve. So what you find in the financial services is we find, say, typically banks can solve many problems, but sometimes we say it's about democratization. So someone picks one aspect and really provide a solution to solve it. And the way that we are set up as a bank is that we recognize this. And so we collaborate a lot with fintechs. So we're about innovation, about people who can do it well, and then we provide the infrastructure to allow them, sort of thrive, deliver this solution. These solutions benefit our customers as well. So in the end, customers are happy with us because we can solve this problem through our partnership with fintechs. So that's how we collaborate with fintechs. Thank you.
Fantastic, really interesting. Anthony, from a fintech standpoint, what ideally are you looking for when you're looking at banking providers?
Yeah, when it comes to banking partners, I think everyone knows that banks in general, they have what we call legacy systems, where they have a lot of solutions, but they are not connected. So for someone like us, where we want to be global from day one, we want to make it easier for our customers to be able to do global payments. We're always looking for banks that are actually forward-thinking, banks that are willing to, in some sense, to open up the rails or the payments platform for someone like us to find what is the fastest way to do it quickly in the most compliant way. So when it comes to Nigerian banks, obviously we have on the stage here 2 banks that we work with, and one of the reasons why we work with them is because they think like us. Of course, they're not able to move as fast as us because obviously we're nimble, we're smaller, we don't have the bureaucracy of legacy or complexity when it comes to regulations and so on. But when it comes to working with them, that's what we look for. We look for that banks that they are innovative in thinking, but they cannot execute quickly enough. So that's where we come in.
Okay, so we're going to make it a bit like speed dating here. So I'm going to go on to FCMB next. So when a fintech like Verto shows up and they're like, hey, we're looking to partner with you, what specifically are you looking for to solve key challenges that Nigerian businesses are facing?
Great, thanks. So first, the first thing is, what problem are you solving? You know, there's something that Deo said and Anthony said it. There has to be an underlying problem that is being solved, because banks can be many things to many people, but when it comes to partnering with a fintech, we recognize the fact that we can't be all things to all people. We have different companies that focus on zoning, so you're zoning on a particular area, some others are zoning on education, whatever it is. And so what that does for us is that we're now able to go deeper. We have the benefit as a bank, we have the benefit of having that distribution channel, we have the customers. So you have the solution, we have the customers. How do we have a handshake? We recognize that we're not able to move as fast as we may want to because of many reasons. But that notwithstanding, we're now able to provide the support that, yes, we have legacy systems, but those legacy systems that can actually be of benefit because there's some things that you don't necessarily have to build yourself. So one of the things we've done at FCMB is to create banking as a service specifically for fintechs so that you can focus on your core business, right? And then leave the service areas, the banking service areas to us to provide that infrastructure to support you so you can move faster. So we're interested in helping the businesses scale across Nigeria, globally as much as we can, and leveraging the pool that we have across different platforms, right? You talked about the rails, there's regulation. There's so many ways we can support the fintech space, which we're doing and we continue to do.
Fantastic, fantastic. And I believe we spoke about the regulatory challenges, some of the sort of compliance things that you have to put in place to actually operate in this environment. What specifically are the main challenges from your end in terms of the requirements to comply for Nigerian businesses?
Yeah, so for me, like I mentioned, the regulatory complexities for Nigeria is one of the challenges or one of the hurdles. And I understand the fact that there have to be a lot of regulations in place, but there has to be a lot of elimination in terms of the bottlenecks instead of the various middlemen, bureaucracy, and all of that we encourage people to go through the right channels and not discourage them to go through the other channels. So if you look at the CPI figures, the Corruption Perception Index, of course, Nigeria ranked one of the top guys in that field. In 2019, I think out of every 100 people who have relationship with a political person, 30% of them actually pay something else or actually go through the wrong channels. So to discourage that, of course, there need to be elimination of those bureaucracy. But I think the government is trying to make effort in that space, and we will see improvement very soon, hopefully, in Nigeria.
Thanks for that, Olumide. And Anthony, as we think about Atlas as a product, how does that help to unlock that complexity in expanding in a compliant way into various markets?
Very good question over here. I'm going to zoom in on what you just said earlier. So there's probably like 3 areas that, as a fintech, we always focus on. One is on the regulatory aspect that we've been talking about. The other side of it is the anti-money laundering. So there's one thing is to solve for your FX, but you actually have to pay somebody, and that's where the compliance angle comes in. So what we've done at Verto and what we've done for Verto Atlas is that whenever we onboard a customer, you go through that complexity of documentation. We're asking lots of questions. People are not happy, but it's to make sure that the source of fund, I think Ola mentioned that earlier as well, the source of fund, the business, we understand the business very well. What that means is that the counterparties that you are going to be engaging with on our platform, they go through the same rigorous onboarding process. And at the back of that, the banking partner that we work with, they feel comfortable with us. They let us do what we need to do. We don't get a situation where a bank, every transaction, they have to check every piece of what we do, because that'll make the whole process long, which is basically what the bank is doing. So the way we build Verto Atlas is that we know what we can do when it comes to solutions. We have multiple solutions within the Atlas, like global account that allow you to collect fund. So if you're a business in Nigeria and you want to sell to Kenya today, if you go through the old method, you probably have to fly to Kenya, open up an entity, find a bank, and you literally just open an entity. So good luck in 3-6 time to even find a bank that want to bank you. And then that's just the first part. Sell your product, get the money in, and then how do you repatriate? All of that is in one platform. You don't need to fly to Kenya. We gave you local accounts. You can collect that money locally. If you want, you can keep your money in Kenyan shilling. There's no need for you to quickly repatriate, because you might have a local employees that you need to pay, and that means that you are even de-risking your FX exposure. So there's no need for you to think about, I have to worry about Nigerian Naira FX, because you're already moving the money back. So those are the stuff that we think about when it comes to the product itself. But the core part of the product is compliance, because if you're not compliant, it means something can go wrong.
Interesting. So multiple markets, we've mentioned sort of Kenya. Most of the banks here are also in multiple countries as well. In this current climate, I think of the top 5 currencies that sort of reduced in value last year, the Nigerian Naira was one of them, Angolan Kwanza, Sudan, probably about 20 different African currencies in double-digit devaluations. This is a question to everyone on the panel, so I'll start with Relaya. What's your perspective of what's happening in the broader macroeconomics within the African markets and leading to these sort of huge devaluations?
That's the $1 million question, right? Because once someone finds out you're a banker in Nigeria, the next question they ask is, so what's happening with FX? And what do we do? And I keep saying that's the $1 million question. What I would say is, and thanks, you've put a lot of color, right? And you've created a context. There's a lot of fluctuation. So the global market is in a flux right now, as we know. And some currencies and some economies have been harder hit than others. Nigeria, for a variety of reasons, right? And the Naira has been hard hit for a number of reasons, largely because I think is what Ola was speaking to, the fact that we have been a monoproduct, right? And so what we like about what Verto is doing is that you're actually opening up intra-African trade. That's the opportunity that we see here. Where, if you ask me where are we going, where are we headed, we know where we would like to be. We know where we desire to be, and we know the policies that the government is putting in place, what the desired end is. How soon it's going to take us to get there, I can't tell you. I wish I knew, and I could tell everyone. If I knew that answer, I'll bottle it up and sell it. But we do believe that things are going to get better towards the second half of the year, as all the policies start to kick in and start to take effect. And as far as the other countries, there is a lot happening across West Africa, as we know. There's a lot happening in East Africa. There's just a lot happening everywhere. And so everyone is having sort of their own personal wake-up moments and trying to redefine what they want to do with their own sovereign state. But the good thing is, what I think we're going to see globally as a continent is that we're going to see a lot more intra-Africa opportunities being leveraged. And I think that's something for businesses to pay attention to. And the fact that, again, I'll say, the fact that you're making it easier for that to happen, because it's interesting that we've always dealt a lot more with outside of Africa because it's just been so difficult to do business in Africa with one another. So if you're able to solve for that, right, and there's so many other things happening to support this, if you're able to solve for that, then I think it bodes well for the continent, as a whole, so not just Nigeria. And we have many more outlets for solutions, for our products, because people love Nigerian products, but they just don't know how to get it into other people's hands and how to get paid for it, more importantly. So if we can crack this, then you're onto a winner.
I think you've nicely set Anthony up. So volatility in all of the key markets across Africa, intra-Africa trade being a key sort of next step for most African countries to solve. Anthony, what's your perspective of the broader markets and the role that Verto Atlas and Verto plays in this landscape?
Yeah, I'm going to stay away from the macro stuff that you're talking about. I think the way to think about it is very simple. One is like information. Like when it comes to some of these markets, the reason why there's volatility is because there's lack of information. What I mean by that is if you use Nigerian, for example, you go on the streets, there's a guy that tells you, here's the price. And you're like, where did you get that price from? But no one knows. And before you know, that becomes the price because information, suddenly that information is not real, but that's what people use. So what needs to happen is there has to be a way to centralize that information. And it has to be in real time. And I think that's what needs to be solved. And I believe the new government are trying to do that. So having access to NAFES and those stuff is the beginning. Having given a day rate that happened last night is not great, but it's the beginning. Because what you need is a real-time data where there's transparency. So I don't need to believe the next man that tells me this is the price. And I think by solving for that, that's what Verto does. So we have a marketplace product, for example, where two businesses can literally trade with each other. And that's your willing buyer, willing seller. Like you come on there, you put a price on it, somebody decide whether they agree or not. They can negotiate with you. If you're happy, you trade. What we're doing behind the scene is we are capturing that data. And that becomes the real data that is not available today. So when you talk about intra-Africa earlier, if you go to maybe one of the data platforms like Bloomberg, you struggle to get a real price because there's no real demand and supply behind the scene. So what we're creating is that demand and supply. And by having that demand and supply means they can actually say, this is the real price. This is the real price that somebody is willing to pay right now. And having that and being transparent at the same time. When you come on a platform, our price is live. We don't tell you one price and next minute change that's at a different price when you send the money. It's the price that you lock in. And some of our customers had actually, right today, they use us for price discovery. Other fintech platform, they use our FX API to build their own product. And that basically is like what I said, what Verto Atlas is trying to do. We're not trying to solve the macro problem because we leave that to the regulators, right? But there's a simple solution, and that's what I think we can do.
Interesting. I'd like to sort of double click here because I think we've covered the macro quite a bit. There's loads of Nigerian businesses here and they want to kind of understand how does this play out for their business and help to inform their decision making and what they do next. So Dale, if you can just give us or give us some insights. This is what we will say in a jam, just cheat sheets of if I'm in Nigerian business, what should I be thinking about doing next, given where the country is heading right now, given the policies that are currently being put in place, and given the fact that I now have to think about how I grow my business. Not one thing is to survive, but actually going into offense and thinking about growing into new markets and finding new opportunities.
Okay. Thank you. I think if you look at the policy direction now, you have to accept that it appears the government is focused on solving this problem we have over time, which is what's the balance of our trade. We have a lot of demand for dollars because we import a lot. I think that as businesses, I think it's time to evolve. I know it's a tough conversation if your business model is based on importing 100% of the input to your production. But it's time to actually realize that it's time to think about evolving your business model. I think that we should focus a lot on how can we produce more locally and how can we reduce the components of what we import. In the long run, I think this is a solution because I think the issue that we see with the devaluation and the volatility is simply around demand and supply, as we know. So the question is, every time we're looking for more dollars, what do we need it for to import stuff? And I think this is happening all over Africa as well. I think, like he was saying, Verto solves a problem to help you pay. But it has nothing to do with what's the valuation of the currency. And I think that what we are most interested in, what really is the right rate for dollar versus naira, and I think it's down to the demand and supply. In the past few weeks, where I've met with customers, manufacturing businesses in Nigeria that are customers of Providence Bank, they say they're focused on how do we reduce the content of our product that we import. So some of them say it used to be 60%, we import these raw materials, 40% local. We're changing this because we're doing backward integration, we're looking at substitutes, and we're now down to 30%, we're importing stuff, 70% local production. I think in the long run, this helps the value of the naira and what the rate is likely to be. But, like she said the other time, we all can't guess what the rate will be, but, it's under the price mechanism now, demand and supply. And, how do we increase supply of dollars into the economy? We have very limited means right now. There's a crude oil. We're not getting 100% of the dollars from crude oil because there's theft. So I believe government is looking into that. There's remittance, like we said, which is helping now that CBN is allowing more IMTOs to come into the business and allowing them to bring dollars into the country. And also there's exports. So one of the things we see that businesses are evolving, and we stay in the middle to help both is around exports. So as a bank, we stay in the middle to help them. You have people who generate naira revenue, but they still need dollars to import materials. So what they do is to go to exporters, people who export agricultural produce, and say, we're happy to go into forward contract with you. We'll provide you with the naira working capital, but please sell your dollars to us when you come back. And where we play a good role is that we provide this, I don't want to say something like escrow service, where you're comfortable that if you give your naira to this customer, your dollar would come. That's one way that we're working with customers. But ultimately, if you're looking about what would the value be, it's around how can we balance between demand and supply. But, likes of Verto solve the problem of payments, but not about the value of the currency. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Deoye. I think you've given us some interesting things to think about. One, so focusing more on local content. So whatever we're producing, how can we look for substitutes locally? Where are the export opportunities for those existing products, and diversifying into new markets? If we go to the enterprise level, Olumide, how do you sort of think about your plans in the medium term, long term to try and solve for similar challenges?
So first of all, I can't solve the economic challenges. We just have to structure our business in such a way that it can navigate some of these challenges or minimize some of the exposure, basically. So what we've done, like one of the steps that we've taken is we can't control what the exchange rate will be, but we can control the timeliness of making our payments and reducing our exposure. So we seek partnership, like we're seeking with Verto, which has helped us in making payments fast. So we bridge the gap between when we receive payment from our customers and the rate at which we receive those payments, and when we convert those payments to the currency in which we have to pay our supplier and the rate. So if we are going with to our customer, we are going to our customer when we're saying, okay, this is the rate today. We put a premium to it that we accommodate for when they're going to pay, maybe like 1 week or so, and we know that we get the money in 1 week, and then we know what the rate could be. No kind of our perception. Hopefully, things doesn't happen blow out of proportion, but we pray in that regard, basically, like what everyone is saying. But we kind of limit the time or the gap between both when you receive payments and when you make payment by also partnering with with Verto beyond just the banking space, because Verto offer that speed, and that's of course the compliance there, but that speed of getting your payments flow on time. So that kind of reduce our exposure within the very dynamic market that we find ourselves, which is Nigeria, basically.
Ooh, fantastic. So a bit of, I say a lot of planning and a bit of praying is part of the plan. So if we say we have some plans for small, medium-sized businesses in terms of diversifying local content, how you manage your treasury, your cash flow management, and your cash management being key for the large enterprise players. Anthony, if we think about Verto Atlas and the currency capabilities and the payment capabilities, how does that start to work as an enabler for making this happen for both small businesses and large businesses?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So for someone like Olumide, what we've done is we've built what we call multi-currency wallets. So all I mentioned earlier, we have 49 currencies. So when you are getting your fund from your customers, sometimes I don't know how you do it before Verto, right? But with Verto, we give you capabilities for you to collect locally. So if your customer is in the US, in the UK, in Africa, the speed at which they can pay you is even faster. So they don't need to send international payment that might take 3 or 4 or 5 days with different banking partner in the middle. Now, with that currency wallet, what that means is that you don't actually have to repatriate. You don't need to change your currency to Naira or any other currency that tomorrow you can get devalued. So that's what we've done with Verto Atlas. We have a multi-currency product. Some of them are called global accounts, which is like 25 currency, all I mentioned earlier. We have our own in-house network of payment through that we built with banking partners like providers, like FCMB, and over 20-something banks that we work across the world. The main reason for doing this is that a lot of businesses, it shouldn't be, the core of your problem is not payment or FX. Like, we should be looking after that. And by thinking about that, it means that you're not even spending time on how to grow the business. And that's basically what Verto Atlas is solving.
Okay, I think that takes us to a nice sort of positive place to try and conclude this. So I'm just going to go around the panel, starting with you, Olumide. When you look around the technology landscape right now, what would you say is the most exciting and innovating thing that you think is going to change the landscape for businesses in Nigeria and also across Africa?
So I think most of the innovation is going around facilitating payments, basically, like in Africa, because there's a lot of need for that payment part, and that's where even the bank is even growing on, and I think the future. And payments now is not just the normal currency. There's a crypto that's come to stay, and the way so. But all is driven towards making payment as seamless as possible, simplified, and understood by the layman, by people, by the farmers who want to import things, by the local people who can't access sophisticated products that is being offered by banks and all of that. So basically, I think payment is one of the future innovations to look.
Thanks for that, Olumide. And Deoye, what are your thoughts?
I think it's exciting times. What I think is happening with fintechs like Verto and some banks like FCMB and Providence Bank and the other banks that you work with, is there is this collaboration. Sometimes I say there's competition and collaboration, and competition and cooperation. So competition because you're providing similar service, but cooperation because you have to do it together. I think you can see it's a trend globally as well. Even the big banks like HSBC and the rest of them recognize that this sort of Atlas product is the way to go because it solves a lot of problems. What I'm hoping happens within Africa is that we don't always have to go into dollar to solve our own intra-continent transactions, you know what I mean? So, or that if I want to import from China, I have to go first into US dollars. So maybe all of this helps us have less dependence on dollar and then this fluctuation that we see in the value. We can go directly to the currency that we need to transact in. So if I'm in Ghana and I'm paying with Naira, I get the local currency straight. It doesn't need to go into dollars first. So I think that's going to happen soon. And there are already trends in that direction. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Deoye. Anthony, I'm going to skip you because I believe you've got an announcement later on. Rolaya, what's your perspective?
So my perspective is, what I'd like to see, and what I think what we're beginning to see is we're actually leveraging on Africa's strengths, which are, number one, our population, two, our demographics. We're a very young continent. And interestingly, we're also very technology savvy. So if you think about it, how many homes actually have a landline? We don't. So the speed with which we pick up technology, right? And so what I'd like to see, and my perspective, and I hope, is that we're now, with solutions like this, and with companies like yourselves, the technology companies that are coming up, are actually leveraging the fact that we have a youthful, so even not youth in age, but youthful-minded, technology willingness. There's a lot of technology willingness to take on new technology. There's a willingness to trade. We're a very entrepreneurial continent, right? But it's just that we have not necessarily had the ability and the platform, right, to be able to leverage on these strengths within ourselves. So what I see happening is that the willingness now, and as Dario said, once we realize we don't necessarily have to go to a third currency to talk to one another, right? We can do transactions between one another with ease. Ease has been the problem. That has been the friction. So once you're able to clear this friction, which I believe is what technology does, then I can trade with someone that in South Africa, in Kenya, in Ghana, in whatever it is, right? And what we're discussing, our commercial terms, are not necessarily cracking our heads about how I'm going to send the money to you, how you're going to get the money to me. So that's what I see happening. I think this is the time for Africa.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Relayo. And Anthony, what's your perspective? And I understand you've also got some special announcements as well as part of this. So if you can give us the double combo.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say AI, DLT. No.
No, Ola has already beat you to that.
There's one solution that I'm actually excited about, but it's probably too early to talk about, and that's stablecoin. We all know what that means. It just makes what Verto trying to do a lot easier, where you have every central banks, every government buy into a currency that can be exchanged with other currency. You might not need to do that if Verto is successful, because if you manage to do this intra-Africa, you might not need stablecoin, but it's one of those solutions that I think is out there. Quick question. How many people here have to do online transaction, buy something on e-commerce platform? Everyone. Okay. Okay, exactly. Who hasn't bought anything online before? Nobody. Who has bought anything online that is not in Naira before? Okay. So you guys would know where I'm going, right? Because the same question that we solve for enterprises when it comes to access to liquidity is even bigger when you look at the day-to-day stuff that we all do, right? So this has been in the works for the last probably 4 weeks because of this event, and we always get a lot of businesses asking Verto, why are you not doing consumers products? This is not announcing consumer product, by the way. But we are launching the first Verto card for Nigerian businesses. So this literally means that. So what we're solving here is outside your big transactions where you need to send money through a bank and so on. If you're a business, you are hosted, you're using Amazon AWS, Azure, or you need to pay anyone online, today you still have to struggle for the same liquidity. The difference is I don't want to say banks, no one have enough liquidity on the card to make that kind of payment. What we've built is you can actually start doing that from today. From your Naira, you can pay into any other G10 currencies. So from pounds, euro, dollars, and it's happening in real time. So all you need is to fund your Naira wallet. Again, you have to be onboarded, as you know, if you're not a customer already. If you're already a customer,
compliant.
Exactly. If you're already a customer, no problem. It's an easy to use. But now you can make a payment, and there's no issue with like having to have liquidity crunch or thinking about how many times I have to go and change money and get into my dollar account first and make the payments. So I believe we have a video for it. And to make it easier, we launched our first mobile app as well, because we've always been desktop. So this is now available on Google Play, it's available on iOS. You can get onboarded in seconds now, so.
Is there a cash prize for the first person to download and onboard? Thanks for that. So I'd like to thank my distinguished panel. You guys have been awesome. Amazing insights, amazing answers. I learned a lot. I hope you all did as well. A round of applause for our panelists, please. And to close the day, I'd like to invite Ola to just give us a closing speech.
Are you waiting to give out the goodie bags? Or it wouldn't be a Nigerian event if we didn't give out goodies, right? So thank you, everyone. Thank you to Olumide Deoye, Rolayo, and obviously Anthony as well, and Ovie for curating the panel. Some key takeaways for me. One is, I think, very, very interesting to hear about how banks and fintechs should be collaborating and cooperating, which I think is very important. One of the things that a lot of people don't know is that people like Verto cannot exist without banks. So even our primary license in the UK means that we need to have a bank to hold money for us. So banks are frenemies. We love them. We're trying to disrupt them, but we love them, and they are not going anywhere, by the way. I know they have, like Anthony said, legacy platforms, but they have a big regulatory moat. Also, hearing from Olumide about the types of challenges, businesses in a country like Nigeria have to navigate. There's this, very famous Nigerian entrepreneur that says that, if you're a Nigerian entrepreneur and you go to heaven, they just open the gates for you because they're like, you know what, there's no way you can be in hell because you spend so much time solving for in a place like Nigeria. That's hell enough. So welcome to heaven. So it's so tough doing business here. It's amazing the resilience of everyone here. So I think we heard some bits about the macro economic environment and the challenges as well. So one thing that was kind of unique was also to learn more about how both bankers that we have on the panel actually think that solving for intra-Africa payments, cross-currency convertibility, is a very big prize. We've actually solved for that at Verto, so maybe a lot of people aren't aware, but of the 49 currencies we offer on Verto, you can directly convert Naira into any of the other 48 ones. So we have businesses in Nigeria that use us to make payments in South Africa, and they just do Naira to Rand conversion. They don't have to do through US dollars. And we also have a lot of businesses that use us in places like Kenya, sending money directly to Nigeria, doing Kenyan shillings and Nigerian Naira, which I think is the aim of the Pan-African Payment Settlement Scheme, PAPS, which has been in the works for a while, but very laudable aim as well. So it's good to hear about the opportunity with respect to intra-Africa trade. There's no reason why we should all be referencing trade against dollars on the continent, given that it's 48 or so different currencies on the continent. And I hope everyone is excited about sort of the Verto card. We've always built for enterprises, which is what Atlas is about. But we also thought, there's tons of SMEs and small businesses and even large enterprises that need a solution, because obviously with the liquidity crunch in Nigeria, I think a lot of the large banks had to cut, foreign currency spending limits on cards. So having the ability to offer both physical and virtual cards for businesses to enable you do your day-to-day spending, we think it's an absolute game changer. And actually, there's actually no limit, because as some of you know, you can do $5-10 million on Verto, right? So I guess if you want to purchase your business jet and you want to put it on the card, we're more than happy for you to test that limit. As long as you load up the Naira, we should be able to deliver and send the money to Gulfstream or wherever you're buying from. So thank you everyone for attending tonight. And then also, most importantly as well, building for the continent. We've always been asked, why don't you have a Verto app? We had a mobile responsive app, but now we actually have a Verto app. So if you go onto iOS or Android Store or Play Store and type in Verto Pay, it should come up. Would love for you to download it. And also there's a what I'll call simplified KYC version for businesses that want to just come on, download the app, and get a card, right? So it's not as rigorous as the KYC we have if you're going to use Verto Atlas. So hopefully that also helps with making sure that customers know that we are here to solve for them. And that's something that we're very passionate about. So I guess you guys could have been anywhere on a Thursday night, but thank you so much for spending time with us. Myself and the team will be around for some time. Feel free to come up, say hi, and if you have any challenges with Verto or you're trying to get onboarded, I'll be more than happy to help out and make sure that we expedite that. Once again, thank you to the panelists for taking the time to help enlighten us on these very important topics, and then also for Ovie for moderating, and most importantly, the audience for coming through. I don't know when they're going to share the goodie bag, but...
You're sharing the goodie bag.
Oh, I'm sharing the goodie bag. Okay, am I? Okay, sorry. So I give the panelists first. Okay, thank you so much.
We need a photo of...
We need a photo. Okay, go ahead. I'll give everyone and then take a photo picture. Okay, thank you.